Hi, everybody. Welcome to this final chapter on law and ethics in abnormal psychology. Let's talk about the big takeaways. First of all, the intersection of psychology and the law is a fairly new subfield of psychology called forensic psychology. It's a specialty of clinical psychologists who sought additional graduate training to work in legal environments or with correctional facility client populations, prison populations. The back of your chapter highlights has a detailed description of this fairly new field and the type of work involved in forensic psychology. It's an interesting area. Secondly, second big takeaway, regarding the insanity defense discussed in this chapter. It is likely that you heard of this before, as most people have, but please do not mistake its popularity for its frequency. The insanity defense is extremely rare in court trials and mostly unsuccessful when they do try to use it as a defense. A lot of people have heard of it, but it's actually very rare. Its popularity in modern culture is more a result of so many people's outrage when the insanity defense occasionally works and a confessed criminal is not punished, but rather treated delicately like a patient with a mental illness. That outrages people, so that's why they talk about the insanity defense. It occurs very rarely, actually. Lastly, regarding predicting dangerousness, the dangerousness of a client. Regarding mental health's explanation, mental health as a field, our explanation for the crazed gunman, the gunman who comes into a place and kills a whole bunch of innocent people. Psychology has always been challenged in moments of national tragedy like this, like the recent shootings in the New England elementary school, or the Naval Yard shooting in Washington, D.C. a few years back, the Virginia Tech shooting, the Columbine High School shooting, the Colorado shooting in the movie theater where they were showing the Batman movie. Psychology has always been challenged in moments like this to explain, didn't you know this could happen? Didn't you know that this person with a mental health history could become a crazed gunman and kill innocent people? Didn't you know? Mental health's response to this, mental health as a field, our response is, let's recall the 3 Ds. Psychologists can only act, we can only diagnose when the 3 Ds are present. The reason why it is so difficult for mental health experts to predict who can be dangerous is that crossing the line from normal to abnormal involves deviance, right, of course, in mood and behavior, that also causes discomfort or dysfunction. Now, in the case of a gunman, somebody who's a shooter, this is causing dysfunction because the person who takes a gun and goes to kill people cannot conform their actions to community and societal norms. By definition, that is dysfunction. We now have deviance and dysfunction. So recall, the 3 Ds must be present to diagnose and act. A person who thinks strange thoughts, we cannot act on them. We cannot diagnose them until the dysfunctional act occurs. And in this case, that act is often the shooting that is already in progress by the time we realize that we have met our criteria for the 3 Ds. So someone with bizarre or paranoid ideas may be quite strange in their behavior, but they're untouchable until their dysfunctional actions, like a shooting, are imminent, or in many cases when they actually occur. For this reason, mass shootings may very well continue to occur, and I know that's a very unsatisfying reply from the mental health giver community. So in summary, the big takeaways in this chapter, the intersection of psychology and the law is a really interesting subfield called forensic psychology. Read about it at the end of your chapter highlights. Second big takeaway regarding the insanity defense, please do not mistake its popularity for its frequency. The insanity defense is extremely rare, and even when it's used, it rarely works. And lastly, regarding mental health's explanation for the crazed gunman who kills innocent people, recall the 3 Ds must be present for a psychologist to diagnose and therefore act to intervene. The reason why it's so difficult for mental health experts to predict who can be dangerous is we see deviance, yes, deviance in thought and feelings, but we don't yet see the dysfunction where a person cannot conform their actions to community and societal norms. The dysfunction starts with the first shot, and that's when we're able to say deviance +1 and diagnose, but often people are already hurt by then. And that's not a satisfactory answer, I understand, but that's why. That's how mental health explains the crazed gunman, the serial shooter. Those are the big takeaways from this chapter on law and ethics in abnormal psychology. Thank you, everyone.